When you open your first story, you should see something like this. This is your starting point. Don't delete it. And from here, the story starts. The most basic shape we use is the rectangle. You can see immediately an arrow is drawn. So from start, we go to the rectangle, and this is where we write our story. We give the rectangle a name. We start with numericals. I'll just call it 001 start. And we don't really need a display title, but we need a text. And so we don't lose any focus on learning. We will not create like unique new story now, but just use Snow White because everyone is very familiar with Snow White, and just to get a hang of the technicalities behind it and don't get confused by a new story. So let's say you are Snow White and very pretty. Your stepmother hates you for it and tells the hunter to kill you. You are alone in the woods with him. What do you do? That's how you basically write, just as a text field. Of course, this is on purpose a terrible question because this question is very open-ended. What do you do? This could mean anything. I'm starting a company. I'm getting in my car and driving away. I'm just flying away. I kill him. I can do whatever. So we need to somehow limit the choices. We can say, do you persuade him to let you go, or do you fight him? Now that's still very distinctive, different choices, but it's not an infinite amount of choices. And what we have right now is just a one-way shape, so we don't actually have any options. We wrote options here, but we don't actually have them. To actually get options or continuations, as we call them in Twist, we need to go and change the type to option list. Now we get a bunch of different fields. The text is still there, and the continuations are how we can continue the story. So what we have here is persuade him to let you go or fight him. So I would say the first option we have is persuade him, and then we make the next continuation option by using a dash, and then the other continuation is fight him. Now people might not say persuade him, they might just say persuade. So we should also add an alternative continuation, which is persuade. And we also said persuade him to let you go. So people might just respond with he should let me go. So let and go should be in here as well. Him shouldn't be in here because it's in both. If all the system recognizes him, we don't know if the player said persuade him or fight him. So we don't do that. And fight him, of course, should also have fight. And then we have the reprompt. If the players don't respond for too long, usually it's just a copy paste of the question. The reprompt is what will be asked again, because these players shouldn't have to go through all the text again just because they forgot the question. Might be that the toddler interrupted them and they forgot where they were at or what the options were, and then they don't want to listen to this could be like a minute long before they can continue. So I have set up everything correctly here. My first continuation is persuade him, my second is fight him. Now I add another rectangle here, which is already labeled as persuade him, and the second rectangle I add will have fight him as a label. I can also check here by clicking on the continuation This one says persuade him, this one says fight him. I always like to keep everything clean. And now we have two different options. So this is 002A, persuaded hunter. And this is 002B, hunter battle. Now persuaded hunter is, let's say, you ask very nicely to let you go, and he agrees on the terms that you never ever return. You pinky swear and go deeper into the forest. And the hunter battle is, you have an epic fight with the hunter, and in the end you manage to defeat him before running off into the forest. Now, what I've done here is the player has made a choice how they wanted to deal with this situation, but it's a flavor choice. Right now, it doesn't have any larger impact because in the end, the player does run into the forest. If you don't do this, it's very easy to build a pyramid. Every shape starts off branching into two other shapes and then two more shapes and so on. And in the end, you have a very short story that can be played in hundreds of ways, which is not what we want, because usually players don't return to a story all that often. They play it once, and that is their unique experience. That is how they wanted to play the story. And yeah, that's why it doesn't really matter to add flavor choices. But of course, there are ways to make these choices more than just flavor. Well, we're here at 003, meeting the dwarfs. Because that's what you do as Snow White. You come to a tiny house full of tiny furniture with nobody there. When you awake from a good night's sleep, there are 7 dwarfs watching you and asking what you are doing here. And then we give the player another choice. Do you say you are a refugee, or do you say it's none of their business? Now again, we change it to option list, copy paste that as a reprompt, and first continuation would be refugee, second continuation would be none of their business, and this is none and business as alternatives to activate it. First one was refugee, the second one was none of their business. 004, honest to dwarfs. Oh, of course, it should be 004A because we have two different ones. 004B. Lie. Well, it's not really a lie, but let's just go with lie to dwarfs. The titles will not be displayed to players anyway. Okay, the dwarfs are very sad to hear that and agree to let you live with them and protect you. The dwarfs are happy there's nothing wrong with you and offer you to stay. Again, we're at the same place now. The dwarves let you agree to stay, but with a different side note, which I will get to in a second. 005, living with the dwarves. You live with the dwarves for a couple of years when one day someone comes knocking at your door. Now I will explain a very important feature of Twist, which is the gateway. The gateway is an automatic choice done for the player by variables that have been set before. So let's say we go to Persuaded Hunter, variables, and create a new variable by just saying Hunter is alive. We've just created that, and here we set it to 1, which we will just treat as true. And here on Hunter Battle, we use a plus because we already have that variable, and we set Hunter is alive to 0. Now the gateway can link to multiple things. The line, the first one is always a default path when nothing is true. And the second one we can set. So type condition, and the condition here would be Hunter is alive equals 1. So we go here, the system goes here automatically when the hunter is alive, because we've persuaded the hunter. And then that is 006B, hunter warning, let's call it that. It's the hunter. He warns you that your stepmother is coming. And here it could be 006A, stepmother arrives. Actually, we can just move this here. And from the hunter warning, we go over here as well. Again, so this is not creating a pyramid, but this is giving you giving the player a sense of, oh, because I let them live, now the story is different. But for us, it's not a crazy overload of work. And then this, of course, doesn't need a 7. Doesn't need an A. Okay, and this is, let's say, your stepmother is in disguise before you and is trying to force down an apple your throat. It's a bit different than the original, but I think it's okay to have fun with it. And then we can add another gateway and say, well, did you tell the dwarves the truth about you being a refugee, or did you tell them that everything is fine? Because that could determine whether they are willing to help you or not. So we set up another variable and just say honest to dwarves, create it. We set it to 1. And here we already have it, so we just use a plus. And we use the honest to dwarves set to 0. So if you were honest to the dwarves, then honest to dwarves equals 1. 008B would be here. Dwarves to the rescue. The dwarves attack your evil stepmother and everything is fine. Hooray. 008 Dwarves are confused. The dwarves are disappointed in you for lying to them and refuse to help you. You die. Oh, that's the wrong title. Okay. There it is. All right, and then we can, of course, have counters. Can use as variables as counters. So let's say we have good Snow White by behaving good. Good Snow White starts with 0, and then if you persuade the hunter instead of battling and killing them, you also get, you increase good Snow White by 1. And then honest to dwarfs is also, I would say, commendable behavior. So we again increase it by 1. And then we can have another gateway. And that will determine, well, were you good or were you not good? And that is here condition. And we can now say, well, okay, we want them to have at least one time behaved well. So let's say it's greater equals 1. Then you were a good Snow White. And then it says 009A, you were bad. You were an evil Snow White. Oh, that's the wrong field. And here it says 009B, you were good. In Texas, you were a good Snow White. And then we can end it by using this. This is just the end module or shape. All right. This is a spontaneous retelling of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But let's see, because audio stories have one thing that sets them apart from other stories, and that is from other interactive stories, and that is how much time can pass between choices. And that is, if you don't pay attention to it, you will have to do a lot of rework in the end. So please pay attention to what I'm explaining here, because it will come back to haunt you if you don't. So here we do have the calculated reading time below every text field. This is 14 seconds right now, which is fine, 14 seconds, and then you have your first question. And then here you have 10 seconds, and you have 18 seconds. You need to realize that these are chained together. There's no, even though they are two different shapes, there's no question in between. So this is not 10 seconds and 18 seconds. This together is 28 seconds. And when writing for audio, you want to ideally stay at 60 seconds. You can go up to 120 seconds. If you go higher, then players will start dropping off. And if you go up to 240 seconds, the system will shut down because the response time has been too long. So you need to stay between 60 and 120, 60 and 120 seconds between choices. Now, why have I done all these gateways? Because this is another common trap that you think, okay, well, here I'm giving out a question, and then here I have 6 seconds, and here I have 7 seconds. Oh, this is true, so I again add 4 more seconds. Here I again add 7 seconds. Still, I'm having no choice. I'm just going through gateway after gateway. Okay, and another 6 seconds, and another 2 seconds. I wrote very, very short texts for the purpose of this demo, but usually you will have let's say 30 seconds of content here. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shapes. If all of them had 30 seconds of content, then you're already at 3 minutes without an interaction, which is a red flag. People will drop off left and right if you do this. And you might not even notice because you're just looking at the individual shapes and think everything is fine because the individual shapes are rather short. If you want to play your story, that's the last thing I'm going to show you, and then we can continue with the presentation. Up on the top right is a play button. And that's where you play it. So you have, you have the text, and you can just say, well, I want to persuade him. Here you have your variables. You can also change your variables on the fly during testing if you don't want to go back all the way, if you have a very long story, and just say, okay, well, I want to set it to 2 already. And then I say now the business. And then you can already see that those were the only choices I made. All the other models, they didn't give me a choice in between. Now I can jump back by clicking on any of the previous. Yeah, well, of course. Usually you can jump back by clicking on any of the previous ones, but I can also just restart. All right, and just to give you an idea of what this can look like in the end, showing you my first story in Twist, which is the voyage. I'm using this tool over here, which is very handy for navigation. The orange rectangle, if I click on it, I can just move very quickly through the story. So what you see here, it's rather linear. I'm working a lot with variables. All the dotted lines are variable settings. And it's all rather linear. And then here's some more elaborate things. And here it actually explodes. Because the earlier you explode, the bigger the pyramid problem you face. If you start in the beginning by saying, well, do we want to go to Earth or Mars? That's a huge difference because while you're basically telling completely different stories, and that in the beginning is very difficult to contain. So you're just writing 2 stories in one. And the later you do that, the easier it is to deal with it.